In Chapter 6, we're going to be talking about communicating with a diverse population. Communication is essential to the development of partnerships that make community policing an effective strategy for ensuring public safety. Community policing programs in which law enforcement officers partner with community members to identify and solve problems cannot work well when officers and residents fail to understand each other. Let's talk about the communication process. Nonverbal communication and body language. Nonverbal communication includes everything except the actual words that are spoken in a message, such as a person's tone, their pitch, or their pacing, whether they're walking fast back and forth or stomping their feet. These are all nonverbal signs of communication. A person's posture, even their eye contact. Even gestures such as shrugging their shoulders, these are all signs of nonverbal communication. Let's talk about barriers to communication. Two critical barriers to communications in a diverse society are language barriers and culture barriers. In the United States, more than 55 million people age 5 or older. 20%, in other words, 20% of the country's population speak a language other than English. And many of them also use jargon, like the younger folks, they use jargon and sometimes words that the older people don't quite understand. Or in a conversation, another communication barrier could be someone just simply failing to listen because they're so busy trying to decide what they're going to say next that they're not listening to what the person is actually saying. So these are all barriers to communication. Let's talk about facing the challenge of this diverse society in which we live in. Keeping the peace and serving and protecting a society as diverse as the one that we live in the United States present an extreme challenge to police officers. To meet these challenges, police must consider the following guidelines. First of all, each person is an individual. Also, each group, whether racial, ethnic, religious, or socioeconomic, consists of people who share certain values. Knowing what these values are can contribute greatly to effective police community interactions. Each group can contribute to making the community a safer place is also something that we need to recognize. Also, communication skills are vital. Empathy, listening, and overcoming language barriers are all crucial in implementing a community policing philosophy. An awareness of personal prejudices and biases can also guard against discrimination. An awareness of the language use that's used to talk about different groups is also extremely important. We have to watch some of the things in which we say so that we don't offend someone, and that can also become a communication barrier. Let's talk about persons with disabilities, understanding disabilities and the ADA. When people think of cultural diversity, they typically think of racial or ethnic, religious, or socioeconomic differences among citizens. However, a significantly large minority group in the United States, as a matter of fact, an estimated 36 million non-institutionalized people consist of individuals with physical or mental disabilities. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that about 12% of Americans have disability. And this is a figure that's likely to rise as the population ages and the baby boomers get older. So this is something that's going to change. These are populations that provide even more diversity and challenge to community policing efforts. Let's talk a little bit about age diversity. This can also be a problem. This is yet another communication challenge, and when police officers have to interact with those who are much older or much younger than they are. Law enforcement officers deal with individuals of all ages, and they must be able to communicate effectively with them. If not, then they're going to have some issues and some problems when they're trying to communicate with them. Let's talk about victims and witnesses. A final population presenting communication challenges are victims as well as witnesses to a crime. You know, it's essential for law enforcement officers to communicate effectively with victims as well as witnesses, because these people are going to be a major source of common crime information that's known that the police officers might need. So they have to be able to effectively communicate with these individuals in order for them to get the information that they're trying to get in order to solve the crimes and catch the bad guys. Society has made progress in assisting victims of crime. In 1991, as a matter of fact, the president, who was then Ronald Reagan, proclaimed National Victims of Crime Week, and it put a full weight and influence of his office behind the victims movement. So he really went out of his way to make this an effort to help crime victims. Now, since then, a variety of organizations and programs have been created in order to help victims of crime. In all essence, this is something that they weren't experiencing at one point in time, but now a lot of people and a lot of different organizations are on board to try to help them get through their dilemmas. Here are some examples of some of those agencies that can assist. There are community groups, there's domestic violence programs and centers out there, mental health care programs, rape crisis, welfare agencies. All of these can help assist victims. These are all agencies that can help them to get through the ordeal in which they have become a part of. Also, here are some examples of victims' rights and services that can help victims and witnesses of crimes. There are children advocacy centers, there's crisis response team, community policing, comprehensive victim service centers, and quite a few others out there that can help assist the victims. In summary, the quality of police-community relations depend on effective communications. We have to be able to communicate with one another in order to help. Two critical barriers in a diverse society are language and culture, as we've discussed. Also, officers must have more barriers they may have more barriers because of the image that they convey, their position or their authority. The nature in which the work that they do can present a barrier within itself. Also, other common communication barriers includes prejudices and stereotypes. With these things in the way, it can cause problems with communications, and it can help people not want to help the police and vice versa. So we have to make sure that we don't have these barriers when we're going in trying to talk and trying to help these different diverse groups in which we deal with and which our population is made up of.